He was dying of tuberculosis, gasping for air on a cold Scottish island. He was a man in a race against time, desperate to leave a warning for us. He knew that the greatest threat to our freedom wasn't just a bomb or an army, but the slow, silent erosion of truth. He saw how governments could use fear to turn neighbor against neighbor, and he wanted to show us exactly how that process works so we could stop it before it starts. We begin our story in a place called Airstrip 1, which used to be London. But the London you know is gone. The city is a crumbling, gray landscape of rotting houses and bombed-out ruins. In this world, the planet is divided into three massive, warring superpowers: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia. Our story takes place in Oceania, governed by an entity known simply as the Party. At the top of this pyramid is a face you see everywhere, on posters, on coins, on every screen. A man with a heavy black mustache and eyes that seem to follow you wherever you move. This is Big Brother, and the slogan plastered under his face is the first thing you learn in this world. Big Brother is watching you. Our guide through this nightmare is Winston Smith. Winston is an ordinary man, 39 years old, with a thin body and a varicose ulcer above his right ankle that makes it painful for him to walk. He is not a hero in the traditional sense. He is a man who is tired, cold, and hungry. He works for the Ministry of Truth, which is the most supreme irony of this world. You see, the Party operates through four ministries with names that mean the exact opposite of what they do. The Ministry of Peace deals with war. The Ministry of Plenty deals with starvation and rations. The Ministry of Love is the most terrifying of all. It is the center of torture and brainwashing. And the Ministry of Truth? That is where history goes to die. Winston's job is to rewrite the past. If the Party promised last week that there would be a surplus of chocolate, but instead there is a shortage, Winston goes into the archives, finds the old newspapers, and changes the numbers so it looks like the Party was right all along. If a person falls out of favor with the government and is executed, Winston erases every mention of them. They become an unperson. They never existed. This is the first major lesson of the book. He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. If you can make people forget what happened yesterday, you can make them believe anything today. Winston lives in a small apartment dominated by a device called a telescreen. It's a metal plate that looks like a dimmed mirror. It broadcasts propaganda 24 hours a day, but here is the catch. It also works as a camera and a microphone. There is no way to turn it off. You must live your entire life, from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep, in the assumption that every sound you make is being overheard and every movement is being scrutinized. Even the slightest twitch of a facial muscle, an unconscious look of anxiety, could be interpreted as a sign of rebellion. This is what the Party calls face crime. One day, Winston does something that is effectively a death sentence. He steps into a small alcove in his room, just out of the direct line of sight of the telescreen, and he opens a diary. In a world where nothing is illegal because there are no laws, but everything is punishable by death, writing in a diary is the ultimate act of defiance. He picks up a pen, a real pen, an archaic tool in this digital-like age, and he begins to write. He doesn't even know who he is writing for. The future? The unborn? He writes because his mind is full of a pressure that has to be released. He writes, down with Big Brother. He writes it over and over until his hand cramps. In that moment, Winston has become a thought criminal. He knows that sooner or later, the thought police will catch him. In Oceania, the question isn't if you will be caught, but when. The atmosphere Winston lives in is one of constant, manufactured hatred. Every day at the ministry, there is a ritual called the 2 minutes hate. All the workers gather around a massive screen where the face of Emmanuel Goldstein appears. Goldstein is the enemy of the people, the man who supposedly betrayed the Party and now leads a secret underground resistance called the Brotherhood. As his face appears, the people in the room break into a literal frenzy. They scream, they throw things, they hiss in a collective, uncontrollable rage. Winston watches this and realizes how easy it is to manipulate human emotion. The party takes all the frustration, the sexual repression, and the physical misery of the people and channels it away from the government and toward a common enemy. It's a psychological trick that we see in our world every single day, the us versus them mentality. If you can keep people angry at a scapegoat, they will never look up to see who is actually holding the leash. During one of these sessions, Winston makes eye contact with a man named O'Brien, a high-ranking member of the inner party. For a split second, Winston thinks he sees a flash of intelligence, a shared secret in O'Brien's eyes. He starts to hope that maybe, just maybe, O'Brien is a rebel too. But there is another person Winston is watching, a young, dark-haired girl from the fiction department. He hates her. He hates her because she looks like the perfect party member, young, energetic, wearing the scarlet sash of the junior anti-sex league that he imagines she is an agent of the thought police, following him, waiting for him to slip up. He dreams of hitting her with a cobblestone. This is what the party has done to human relationships. It has turned love and attraction into suspicion and fear. The party's control extends even to the very words we speak. One of Winston's colleagues, a man named Syme, is working on the latest edition of the Newspeak dictionary. Newspeak is the only language in the world that gets smaller every year. The goal is to delete words like freedom, justice, and honor. If you don't have a word for freedom, how can you even think about it? The party wants to narrow the range of thoughts so much that thought crime becomes literally impossible because there will be no words left to express a rebellious idea. Syme explains this with a terrifying enthusiasm. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Winston looks at Syme and knows that he will be vaporized soon. He is too intelligent. He sees the mechanism too clearly. The party doesn't want enthusiasts. It wants mindless followers. As Winston struggles with his growing rebellion, he begins to wander the streets of the prole districts. The proles are the working-class people who make up 85% of the population. The party ignores them, leaving them to live in poverty, gambling on the lottery, and drinking cheap gin. The party's motto is, "Proles and animals are free." Winston looks at them with a mixture of pity and hope. He writes in his diary, "If there is hope, it lies in the proles." He believes that only this massive, unorganized force has the power to rise up and shatter the party. But the proles don't even know they are oppressed. They are too busy surviving to care about revolution. They remember the price of beer, but forget the name of the country they were at war with 5 years ago. One evening, Winston wanders into a dusty, flickering junk shop in the prole district, owned by a gentle old man named Mr. Charrington. In a world of plastic and steel, this shop is a graveyard of the past. Winston finds a heavy lump of glass with a tiny pink coral trapped inside, a beautiful, useless object that serves no purpose in a world of efficiency. He buys it, not because he needs it, but because it belongs to an age of elegance that the party has tried to erase. Mr. Charrington then shows him a room upstairs, a room without a telescreen. To Winston, this is a miracle, a place where you can be alone, a place where you can breathe without being watched. It's a dangerous fantasy, but Winston is already hooked. Shortly after this, the dark-haired girl from the ministry, the one Winston feared and hated, trips in the hallway and falls right in front of him. As he helps her up, she slips a small scrap of paper into his hand. Winston is terrified. He assumes it's a summons from the thought police. But when he gets back to his desk and opens it, the note doesn't say, "You are under arrest." It says 3 simple words, "I love you." This moment changes everything. The girl's name is Julia. Unlike Winston, she isn't interested in the philosophy of the party or the grand history of the world. She is a rebel from the waist down. She hates the party simply because it tries to stop her from having fun, from being human, and from experiencing pleasure. For Winston and Julia, their first secret meeting in the woods outside London isn't just a romantic encounter. It is a political act. In Oceania, the party wants to channel all human energy into the service of the state. They want to destroy the family and replace it with loyalty to Big Brother. By loving each other, Winston and Julia are committing the ultimate theft. They are taking back their own bodies and their own emotions. Winston rents the room above Mr. Charrington's shop, and for a few brief weeks, they live a double life. They eat real sugar and drink real coffee stolen from the inner party. They watch the prole woman outside singing as she hangs her laundry. Winston looks at the glass paperweight and imagines that he and Julia are the coral, safe inside a bubble of time. But the bubble is fragile. Winston knows it's a dream that must end in a nightmare. He tells Julia, "We are the dead." She, with the vibrant optimism of youth, replies, "No, we're not dead yet." The tension reaches a breaking point when Winston finally approaches O'Brien. To his shock, O'Brien confirms that he is indeed a member of the secret brotherhood. He invites Winston and Julia to his luxurious apartment, where, incredibly, he is allowed to turn the telescreen off for a short time. O'Brien initiates them into the resistance, making them swear to commit acts of sabotage, to lie, to kill, and to give up their lives for the cause. He gives Winston a book, the legendary manifesto written by Emmanuel Goldstein, titled The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism. Winston takes the book back to the secret room and begins to read. This is where Orwell explains the why behind the nightmare. The book explains the concept of doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs in your mind simultaneously and accept both of them. It explains why the war never ends, because the war is not meant to be won, it is meant to be continuous. War is a tool to use up the products of human labor without raising the standard of living. It keeps the population busy, frightened, and dependent on the government. As Winston reads, he feels a sense of relief. He isn't crazy. The world really is as insane as he thought it was. But just as he feels he has finally understood the truth, the nightmare begins. A voice rings out from behind a picture on the wall. "You are the dead." The picture falls away to reveal a hidden telescreen. Mr. Charrington, the kind old shopkeeper, walks in, but he is transformed. He is a member of the thought police. The room is swarmed by black uniformed guards. The glass paperweight is smashed on the floor, the coral rolling away, looking tiny and insignificant. Winston and Julia are torn apart, beaten, and dragged away to the Ministry of Love. The second half of our journey takes us into the bowels of that terrifying building. There are no windows. The lights are never turned off. It is the place where there is no darkness, but not in the way Winston hoped. Here, Winston meets O'Brien again, but not as a comrade. O'Brien is his interrogator. He explains to Winston that he has been watching him for 7 years. He has allowed Winston to rebel, allowed him to fall in love, just so he could break him more completely. The torture is not just physical, it is psychological. O'Brien doesn't want Winston to confess to crimes. He wants to change his mind. The party is not satisfied with obedience. They want total surrender. O'Brien holds up 4 fingers and asks Winston how many he sees. If the party says there are 5, then Winston must truly believe there are 5. Winston tries to resist. He clings to the idea that truth is something objective, something outside the party's control. But under the weight of pain, the boundaries of reality begin to blur. O'Brien explains the party's ultimate philosophy. Power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of power is power. The object of torture is torture. O'Brien paints a picture of the future. A boot stamping on a human face, forever. Winston is broken down until he is a shell of a man. He accepts that 2 + 2 = 5. He accepts that Big Brother is the savior of the world. But deep down, in a tiny corner of his soul, he still loves Julia. He has not betrayed her in his heart. O'Brien knows this. There is one final step, one place where every person's resistance crumbles. Room 101. In room 101, you are faced with the worst thing in the world. For some, it is fire. For others, it is burial alive. For Winston, it is rats. O'Brien brings in a cage of starving, carnivorous rats and prepares to strap it to Winston's face. In a moment of pure, blinding terror, the last thread of Winston's humanity snaps. He doesn't just want the torture to stop. He wants the pain to be transferred to the person he loves most. He screams, "Do it to Julia, not me, Julia." With those words, Winston is finished. He has betrayed the only thing he had left. The story ends with Winston sitting in the Chestnut Tree Cafe. He is a free man, in a sense, but he is a ghost. He sees Julia one last time, and they both admit that they betrayed each other. The spark is gone. The emotion is dead. As a news bulletin announces a great military victory for Oceania, Winston looks up at the giant poster of Big Brother. Tears of gratitude trickled down his nose. The struggle is over. He has won the victory over himself. He loves Big Brother. Now that we have walked through the wreckage of Winston's life, we have to ask the most important question. Why does this matter to you? Right now, in the 21st century? Orwell wasn't just writing a story about a fictional government. He was diagnosing a sickness in the human mind that exists in every era. This is where we move from the story into the psychology of our own lives. The most terrifying concept in 1984 isn't the torture, it's doublethink. In our modern lives, we see this play out in how we consume information. Think about how often we are told to ignore what our own eyes and ears are telling us because it doesn't fit a specific political or social narrative. We see it in the echo chambers of social media, where we are trained to believe two contradictory things, that we are more connected than ever, yet we feel more isolated and lonely than any generation in history. When you lose the ability to stand on the firm ground of objective truth, you become easy to manipulate. If you can't define what is true, you can't define what is wrong. Consider the ministry of truth in your own life. We live in an age of digital footprints where, just like Winston's records, things can be vaporized or rewritten. A post you made 10 years ago can be edited or deleted, or a public figure's past can be scrubbed clean. This creates a psychological state of permanent present, where we lose our sense of history. When you don't know where you came from, you have no roadmap for where you are going. This is why the party focused so hard on the children. They turned children into junior spies who would turn in their own parents for a stray comment. They were attacking the most fundamental unit of human stability, the family. In our world, we see this reflected in how technology and career pressures can pull the family unit apart, leaving individuals isolated and more susceptible to the influence of large, faceless institutions. There is also a deep lesson here about language. Think about how our own vocabulary is shrinking. We use emojis and slang to replace complex emotions. When we lose the words to describe melancholy, nuance, or integrity, we lose the ability to feel those things deeply. The party knew that if you control the language, you control the thoughts. If you want to be a free person today, your first act of rebellion is to expand your mind. Read deeply, learn old words, and refuse to let your thoughts be reduced to a 280-character soundbite. Look at the 2 minutes hate. Doesn't that look exactly like a modern cancel culture dogpile or a viral outrage cycle? We are often baited by algorithms to feel a spike of anger toward a stranger or a group we've never met. This anger feels productive, but it's actually a trap. It's manufactured emotion that keeps us from looking at the real problems in our lives, our finances, our relationships, and our personal growth. The party wanted the people to be angry at Goldstein so they wouldn't notice they were starving. In your life, ask yourself, who is benefiting from my anger today? The tragedy of Winston and Julia is a warning about the erosion of privacy. Winston thought he found a sanctuary, but there was a camera behind the painting. Today, we carry those cameras in our pockets. We trade our privacy for convenience every single day. While we aren't being watched by a dictator in most places, we are being watched by data harvesters who know our desires before we even feel them. Orwell's message isn't that we should live in fear, but that we should value our inner core, that place inside your mind that belongs only to you. If you give that away, you give away your humanity. So how do we apply this? How do we avoid becoming a Winston Smith? It starts with the refusal to betray yourself. Winston's ultimate failure wasn't that he was tortured, It was that he eventually wanted to love Big Brother. He gave up his internal compass. In your daily routine, this means practicing intellectual honesty. It means admitting when you're wrong, even if it's embarrassing. It means standing up for a truth even when it's unpopular. It means disconnected from the telescreens of our age, the endless scrolls and notifications, to spend time in silence, where your own voice can actually be heard. If you want to grow your career or improve your relationships, you have to be the master of your own past, present, and future. Don't let others narrate your life for you. Don't let a ministry of plenty tell you that you are successful just because you have more gadgets, while your soul is empty. True power, the kind that leads to a fulfilling life, is the power over your own character. As we come to the end of this journey, remember the image of the glass paperweight. It was a beautiful, useless thing that Winston loved because it represented a piece of history that couldn't be altered. Your mind is that paperweight. It is a fragile, beautiful thing in a world that often feels like it wants to smash it. Protect it. Cherish your ability to think for yourself. George Orwell's 1984 is a dark book, but its purpose is to keep us in the light. It's a call to wake up, to look at the world with clear eyes, and to value the freedom of a single, private thought. You are not a cog in a machine. You are not a data point for an algorithm. You are a human being with the capacity for reason, for truth, and for real, unmanufactured love. Thank you for spending this time with us in the universe of book. If this deep dive moved you or made you rethink the world around you, please hit that like button. It helps us keep these stories alive. Subscribe and join our community so we can continue exploring the ideas that shape our lives. And I want to hear from you in the comments. What is one thing in our modern world that feels a little too much like 1984 to you? Let's start a conversation about truth. Remember, liberty is the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Stay curious, stay rebellious, and we will see you in the next chapter.